The big lesson for me this year has been learning how to diversify our revenue and making sure that we have something that I call job-like income.
Hey there, this is Neil Napier and welcome to MyFirst1000 podcast. And I'm here with Andy Tor. And Andy, I hope I'm pronouncing your second name right.
Hey Neil, yeah, that's absolutely right, Tor.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to be asking Andy a few questions about how he was able to get to his first $1,000 using the power of courses and training and coaching as well. So Andy, could you start by telling us a little bit about your business?
So our business is called Authentic Networker, and we work with business owners and sales professionals who struggle with feeling disorganized and overwhelmed and not confident when they go out into the marketplace and promote their business and meet new potential clients and follow up and that sort of thing. So we show them a systematic, predictable way to convert casual in-person conversations into business connections. And we show them how to do that on a repeatable basis. So it's essentially lead gen, but for in-person networking that leads up to some kind of a sales conversation.
Interesting. I really like the authentic part here, because every marketer who talks about, selling services, selling consulting, they talk about being aggressive in sales approach. So your idea is to more like get into authentic conversation and work from there, right?
Absolutely. I think the aggressive sales conversation is a little bit outdated, particularly given that we are in a relationship economy. And so consumers are very savvy. They're used to being sold to. They receive a lot of marketing messages every day. And what we found is that, and I think this is reflected in the larger trends, people are really craving real relationships with the people that they do business with. And so when a business relationship depends on a real relationship, like if you're selling a house or life insurance or something like that, we help those business people to build real, authentic relationships with the people that they hope to do business with.
Okay, interesting. So why use courses? Why sell courses, and why build them in the first place for this audience? What prompted you to do that?
Well, it comes down to a training gap. And we realized this about a year ago when we launched a networking group here in Toronto, where we're based. And the group grew very quickly. We've got about 1,000 local business owners who are part of our in-person networking group over the last 12 months. And we noticed the same problems coming up over and over and over again. And what we realized is that anybody who sells anything, whether you're in financial services or network marketing or some other coaching or consulting, everybody's trained to sell. They know the features and benefits of their product. They have some sort of a sales sequence that they're given a specific formula for closing, but there's no training to bookend that sales training. So they don't know how to build a relationship from nice to meet you all the way up to sitting down with someone and having a sales conversation. And then they don't know how to maintain a relationship after the sale has been made, or even if the sale hasn't been made, how do you maintain a relationship with somebody because that relationship may still be useful. So we look at our training as a bookend to the sales training that most people will already have.
It's interesting because I feel the same about dealing with people. It can get a little bit difficult trying to follow up, for example, after meetings, because I've been to events myself, and while everything's been really good at the event, we're all palsy, we're all friends, as soon as I come back, that connection just breaks down. So is that something you teach people, to how to authentically do follow-ups and make sure that they get the best out of that relationship?
Yeah, specifically, we teach people how to systemize their follow-up without losing their authenticity. So instead of just becoming some kind of a follow-up robot, you can build a relationship using a predictable sequence of activities. And even after the sale has been made, maintaining that relationship over a period of years in some cases. How do you do that? Most people have a system for selling. They have a system for every aspect of their business, but they don't have a system for building relationships, and that's what we teach.
Interesting. I think I need to get access to this course myself, because I imagine it being very, very useful.
That would be great.
Yeah, so let me ask you this question because the first time I created a course, I wasn't successful outright. What was your reaction? Were you able to make sales soon after you created the course? How did that go for you?
To be honest with you, I was quite surprised at how well our beta went. And I have to give credit to getting some really good coaching and having a really great platform to work from in Kyvio. We are fairly new to digital marketing. My wife and I are the founders of our company, and we are both career educators, but we're not digital marketers. We had never done a launch before, and we were learning by doing. And so the two big things that really happened for us, one was that we found Kyvio, and
Mhm.
I had a really great sandbox to play in as I was learning to build my first sales page and my first opt-in funnels and that kind of thing. So I really appreciated having that platform available to me because I was able to take my time with it and really refine my approach prior to the first launch. And we also had some really good coaching from people who we knew who do course launches for a living. And so they were able to help us focus on the things that mattered. And
Okay.
probably the most important lesson that I learned was the idea of having a minimum viable product. I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, and I think most of us are hesitant to launch until something is absolutely 100% perfect.
Uh-huh.
But when we launched our course, we launched to a very warm list because we had spent a year building relationships with people in our local networking group. And so when we told them we had a course, they were very interested. And we said, look, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be good, but it'll be a little bit rough around the edges. And because we had invested in those relationships, they were fairly forgiving of that. And we made our first sales immediately after our first webinar.
Sure, that was my next question. So getting to your first $1,000, was it relatively quick once you put the offer out there, or did it take you some time?
No, it all happened within a week. So we had a 7-day launch, I think. That was our first one, to a list of about 200 people. Not very
Sure.
big list, but we had really invested a lot of time with the people on our list because they were all part of our local business network. And we had really primed them for this course in person, talking it up. So by the time we actually did our first webinar, we had our first sale right off the webinar, which was really exciting. And then
Yeah.
the sales rolled in over the course of the week, and then quite a few of them came in right before we closed the cart. So we probably, in our first launch, we did $5,000 revenue in our
And what
first.
price point were you selling at?
The beta was 497 Canadian.
Wow. Okay, that's good. And I mean, where's it at now? Have you grown it since?
Yeah, so our beta launch was only 6 months ago. We actually launched the course by selling the idea of the course. We didn't have a course yet, but we had spent a year talking to people in our business network. And as I mentioned earlier, we heard the same problems coming up over and over and over again. And it was really around, how do I meet the right people for my business? What do I say when I'm asked what I do? How do I work my personal story into my business? How do I get ROI from these networking events that I'm going to? How do I follow up properly? There was a very clear set of questions that kept coming up over and over and over again. So what we asked them essentially in our sales letter is, hey, how would you like a course that takes you systematically through, who should I be selling to? Who's my ideal client? All the way through to, how do I build relationships? How do I network? How do I follow up? How do I gain referrals from the people that I meet? And once we had sold enough people on the idea of that course, they had literally given us money for the idea. Then we built the course with them as we took them through it in about 6 weeks.
Interesting. I mean, not a lot of people use this method to make sales first and then deliver content, but the fact that you've built a real community that stood by what you were doing, they were willing to pay for what they could learn from you over the next 6 weeks. So that's an approach that works really well, because that way you don't have to create something up front. You can test out an idea, see how people take it. And if they're only a couple of sales, you can say, sorry, we decided not to do it because there wasn't an interest. Here's your money back. But if you get 10 sales, then you think, why not? Let's just go all in and do this course.
Exactly. That was the logic that we used. We didn't want to invest a bunch of time in creating something that nobody wanted. So we needed some feedback from the market on whether this would be useful. And as it turned out, people were interested enough that we had no objections. People just bought the course. And then we said, okay, we've got some work to do. So we took them through it boot camp style, because part of the deal was you're not going to get a 100% beautiful course. You're going to get a good course, and in return, we're going to get you a great deal on the price, and you're going to give us some feedback and a testimonial at the end. So we were really interested in getting people through to completing the course. We worked very closely with that first cohort of students, and we listened to them. So as we were building the course, if we had some feedback on a previous week's module, then as we were building the current week's module, we made those changes on the fly.
Okay, that's very nimble. It's a very flexible way to build it. And, if I can ask, what stage are you at the moment with this course? Are you still selling it? How much revenue you've generated so far?
Yeah, so we're not in launch at the moment, but we have done 3 launches with this course, and we are working on several different business models for promoting the course. One is going to be obviously online launches, but we have had a lot of interest in this course from the financial services industry locally. And so our game plan moving forward over the summer is to do a lot of live presentations of our sales presentation, and then to enroll people in person rather than having a webinar launch model. Our next big webinar launch will be in the fall. So the benefit of having live audiences over the summer is that we can really refine our sales presentation. Yeah. Because we get that immediate feedback from people, and we can tell when people are making notes or when they're checking their phones or whatever they do. So we have done a total of about $10,000 in revenue over the 3 launches, and we've also made several joint venture partners, which we're going to be working with over the course of the year. So we'll be promoting the course to different lists through to the end of this year.
Very interesting. And do you notice that it becomes kind of easier and more exciting the more you keep doing this, or does it become difficult?
It definitely becomes easier in terms of anticipating what is going to be required of us. So with an online launch, there's a planning component. You really have to be very organized going into a launch. And our first couple of launches, we were about half organized. We were organized up until about the halfway point in the launch, and then we had to scramble a little bit during the launch. So I learned to be more organized, to do more planning up front before we actually open the cart. That was probably my biggest takeaway, and that's helped things to get easier and easier. And then the sales presentation is certainly getting easier the more that we do it and the more that we're able to really refine it.
Sure. Okay. And what are your current challenges moving forward? Because I think now you're at the stage where you've proven the concept that works and you're trying out a few different traffic strategies to get more people into the course. But what are your challenges that are keeping you up at night, or maybe making you worry whether or not you can scale it quickly?
Yeah, so I think the 2 big challenges for us, one is avoiding shiny objects. So as you become more visible, people tend to come out of the woodwork with all kinds of different ideas and opportunities and offers. And so one of our goals is to really remain focused on our plan and moving forward, without being distracted by all of the different shiny objects, and whether that's people relationships or whether that's platforms or tools or what have you. So keeping that focus is very important to us. Sure. The biggest challenge that we have in our personal lives is that we work from home and we have 3 young children. So time management is really critical. The main motivation for us becoming entrepreneurs is so that we can own our time and spend more time with our children. But that can be a slippery slope, and kids can be very demanding of your time. So we have to be very strict about when we have family time and when we are working. And quite often that results in a lot of late nights and working odd hours around the children. So that's a challenge just in terms of maintaining our energy.
I can imagine. So I'm expecting our first kid this October, and I can only imagine how life would be once that happens and how much I could work compared to what I do now.
Yeah, congratulations. It's a wonderful journey. It'll make you a better person.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, for me, a lot of what I do, and like you pointed out as well, it is about lifestyle. It is about living life on your terms, which is why we're doing what we're doing here. How do you think life has changed over the years for you, from when you were still trying things out and to this point where now it's starting to all fall into place? Like, how has the lifestyle changed for you?
Well, we've been in business about 1.5 years with this current iteration of our company. We actually launched the company back in 2012, but I'd been working full-time up until the end of 2017. And then I had an opportunity to do a little mid-career pivot. And we decided that the 9 to 5 thing was not working for me. And, my wife had been at home with the kids and that wasn't working for her. So we said, okay, well, let's start this business and let's see how far we can get in 6 months. And a year and a half later, we're still in business.
Sure, that's pretty good. But if you could still go back and change something, redo something that perhaps you didn't do right the first time around, what would you do? What would that be?
I would probably do more strategic planning and goal setting right up front and get really clear on what I wanted to do. The first year of our business was really just us figuring it out, and I don't think we paid enough attention to things like revenue models. So one of the challenges around having a course launch model is that you don't have regular streams of revenue unless you're evergreen. So if you're just doing live launches all the time, you get these big chunks of income come in and then nothing until your next launch. So the big lesson for me this year has been learning how to diversify our revenue and making sure that we have something that I call job-like income, which is not necessarily a job, but it's freelance work or coaching work or something that is predictable and recurring that will keep the lights on. And then anything that comes in from course launches is really something that we can reinvest back into the business.
Okay, that's very interesting. And I will say that business is a lot about mathematically working out, how long you can stay afloat or how much you can reinvest back in for the next few months. So that's kind of a tough thing that people don't think about getting in, that it is at the end of the day a business. It can't just be passion driven. You have to look at the equation and say whether or not it makes sense. So
I agree. And I think that to be successful in business, you have to have a certain amount of urgency. You can have a long-term vision, but if you don't have urgency, then you spend a lot of time sitting around contemplating things that you can do. Or if you have urgency and no long-term vision, then you're flailing around trying to get some business, but you're not really sure where you're going. So having that, like you said, the vision of knowing where you're going, but then also some real impetus for getting the work done quickly is important.
That's a good point. Is that more intrinsic for you or is it extrinsic, that impetus, that motivation?
I think that's something that I had to learn. I've spent most of the last year and a half learning how to move from an employee mindset to an entrepreneur mindset. And they're two very different propositions. I think I finally made the leap, but it was quite a long transition. And a big part of that was actually just becoming self-motivated and having that what I would call CEO mentality, where you're not putting yourself inside of a box of things that you can do, but you're actually keeping an eye over your entire business and outsourcing the stuff that is going to be too time consuming or technical for you to do yourself.
Got it. Very interesting. Now, just to kind of lighten the mood a little bit, I've got some quick fire questions and you just respond as quickly as you can with whatever comes to your mind first. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, great. So what's your favorite book?
Favorite book right now, I read a lot, so I'll restrict it to marketing, but Expert Secrets has been really good to me, Russell Brunson's book. I read that book when it first came out, and it was really game-changing for me in terms of how I could take the skills that I already had and then leverage that into an influencer type of role.
Sure. It's definitely good. I think it's helped people, like Russell's really good at simplifying messages. So yeah, definitely a good book. Second question, what kind of music are you into?
I'm a musician, so I listen to a little bit of everything. And, I grew up listening to a lot of blues and classic rock, but I also grew up listening to a lot of opera and classical music and jazz. So I'm a bit of an omnivore when it comes to music.
Wow.
The only thing I don't really enjoy listening to is new country.
Okay, I have mad respect for people who can play or sing because it's a skill I have nothing in. It's just amazing if someone can sing really well or play an instrument really well. Are you a singer or do you play instruments?
I play guitar and drums. Wow,
amazing. Do you have a favorite band or a song you really like to listen to all the time these days?
I all-time favorite band is probably Led Zeppelin. That's what got me started playing music in the first place, and I spent several of my teenage years listening to Led Zeppelin only.
Okay.
And my 9-year-old son discovered Stairway to Heaven the other day, so we had to sit down and have a little bit of rock and roll
Ah,
education. So that was a nice,
awesome. That's a great dad and son bonding moment as
it was
well.
really cool. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And traveling, do you travel a lot? I mean, are you a city person, beach person, or something else?
I've always traveled. I'm actually an immigrant to Canada. We came here from South Africa when I was a little kid. And by the time I was 6, I'd lived on 3 continents. And so I think that wanderlust stayed with me. I've traveled all over Southern Africa, Europe, been done a lot of the States. And I tend to get itchy feet every few years. So I think that if I have an option, then I would prefer to go into nature somewhere, go and take a hike in a forest or that kind of thing. It's probably my ideal day.
Well, we've got a lot of good nature here in Finland as well. Nordic countries are really good for beautiful forests, and the seaside's nice. So it's not sandy, but it's when you go to Norway, for example, seeing all the fjords and everything, it's just a different experience.
We honeymooned in Norway actually, so I've seen the fjords and I've spent some time in Sweden. So I just got to work my way over to Finland. It's on the
You
list.
should. Close enough, yeah. What's your favorite city to go to when you're traveling?
My favorite city in the world, aside from Toronto, which is an incredible city, incredible place to live, is Cape Town. That's my favorite place to visit just because it's really a part of my childhood. And so when I go there, it brings back some really wonderful memories. And of course, the beaches are beautiful and the Table Mountain is breathtaking. So if I could
Again,
jump
I've
on a
seen.
plane and go anywhere right now, that's where I'd go.
Cool. I've seen pictures. It looks amazing.
Yeah, you must
Um,
check it out. Absolutely.
yeah, I will. So coming back to course creation a little bit. So a lot of people who are watching this, they're worried that what they know might not be good enough to turn into something that they can sell. Do you have any motivating words for them to get them to take action?
The best advice I got recently from my coach was when I presented him with exactly that problem. I had some self-doubt around my own value. And he said to me, let the market drive your decision making. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it's too easy to second guess yourself. It's too easy to cast judgment on something that you've created, but you don't have the perspective of the market. So he said, create the thing, put it out into the marketplace and see what people say. And if they buy it, then you're on the right track and you should continue with it. And if they don't buy it, then it means that you haven't quite got your offer right or your positioning right, or maybe the market isn't quite ready for it. So it's very easy to spend a lot of time in your head as an entrepreneur, second guessing what you do. But the antidote to that is to take action. And if you can create the thing, or even as we did, just sell the idea of the thing, get that
Yeah.
market feedback, and that is really a great barometer of whether what you're doing has value to the people that you're trying to serve.
Very interesting. One last thing, if people want to learn from you or learn more about what you do, where can they find you?
Sure, thanks. Our website is called authenticnetworker.com. And my email address is just andy@authenticnetworker.com. So if anyone wants to start a conversation about what we're doing, or if I can help anyone listening in any way, that's my email address.
Okay, excellent. So I'll link to both of these, and if you have your Facebook group as well, you can share the link with me or name with me after, and then we can put that underneath this podcast or interview wherever it goes out as well.
Terrific. Our Facebook group is just called Authentic Networkers with an S.
Okay, that should be easy to find.
Easy.
Perfect. Andy, I really appreciate you taking the time out. I'm sure a lot of people will listen to this and they'll feel inspired for taking action, and they'll follow your doing it live strategy and sell something first and then create something after. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate you for building such a great community of Kyvians. It's really a wonderful place to learn these skills and to make my first 10K. So if anybody who's listening has gotten anything of value, then I'm delighted. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.